Hello, everybody, and welcome into our very first ever live broadcast here on the New England Sports Weekly Pod. And today is a special episode, as tomorrow night is the NFL Draft at 8 o'clock for round number one. So we're going to focus heavily on the NFL Draft, especially what the New England Patriots are looking to do. As we all know, they have a few important needs. Number one overall, that quarterback, some other skill positions. We'll dive into that in depth today. But as we get started here on our live broadcast, we'll start off with a little bit of news, some football, some not, as we like to call this the out-of-the-box segment here on the show. And as far as the red-hot Red Sox are concerned, of course, that 9-game win streak, as we talked about last week, did come to a close, but they still sit atop the American League East with a 15-9 record. And they are tied for the best record in all of Major League Baseball as we talk right now, as they are currently facing Jacob deGrom and the New York Mets. And surprisingly, they're up 1-0 as Christian Vasquez rocketed a double into the right field gap. So it's exciting to see them playing well against some high-level competition, which they struggled with here the last couple of years. So now they look like the old Red Sox here as they come to play every night. So they've been exciting to watch. And that starting pitching staff has been holding up over this stretch as well. So they, as I said last week, I know it's still early, but they're exciting to watch. And as far as the Boston Bruins are concerned, they have played very well since trading for Taylor Hall. They've gone 6-2 since picking him up from the Buffalo Sabres. He has fit in really nice with David Krejci and Craig Smith on that second line. So they've finally found some scoring. So really like what he's brought to the table here for the Boston Bruins. The Boston Celtics, on the other hand, that's another story. We won't get into too much of depth in with them. We could do a whole show on them alone with their struggles, how up and down they've been. But they absolutely just dropped a clunker last night to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And this is not your 2014, 2013 Thunder with Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and Harden before he got traded. This is they are let's just say they're bad, really, really, really bad. they're in the hunt for the first overall pick, at least, and they're in that top 5 of the lottery. So it was disappointing last night to see them drop a game to a very winnable Oklahoma City team. So it has not been good at all for the Celtics. So that's where we'll leave it today as far as the Celtics go. We'll touch more on that next week when we do an all-around show. But as far as the NFL is concerned, there was some big news here, and especially if you're a Patriots fan. The Denver Broncos have traded for Teddy Bridgewater from the Carolina Panthers. And how that really wraps up here with the Patriots is that's another quarterback needy team that's decided to go ahead and trade for a starting caliber quarterback. Say what you will about Teddy Bridgewater's skill set and what you really think of Teddy. I mean, I really wasn't all that pumped up and excited when he got put out on the market, when there were rumors about him getting traded before he officially went. To me, he's a tier below Jimmy Garoppolo. He's still a starter. He's still to me, he's more of a placeholder for you. But hey, if Denver, if that's what you want to do, hey, all the power to you. So, but that's another team out of the way. And as we just talked about, the team that Teddy came from, the Carolina Panthers, excuse me. he was traded to the Broncos, and Carolina actually, it was, I believe, on April 5th. So about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks, well, 3 weeks ago, 2.5, whatever it is, he ended up getting traded to the Carolina Panthers traded with the Jets for Sam Darnold. So they are also one of those teams that we're picking at number 8 above the Patriots. So there's 2 quarterback needy teams that basically, I wouldn't say taken themselves out of the market, because, I mean, if say what you want, obviously Adam Schefter came out today of ESPN and did report that it doesn't take the Broncos out of the quarterback market. And I'm sure if you go back and look back on April 5th, there were reports from the NFL Network, from ESPN, whichever organization you want to look into, that said that I'm sure the Panthers are not out of the quarterback market. But I mean, if you're the Panthers, you just traded for a 23-year-old Sam Darnold. And yes, I'm a Patriots fan, so I got to see him up close and personal at least twice a year. And I was not all that impressed. So I didn't want the Patriots to go after Darnold. I know it's the Jets, and I know they ruin careers, especially when Adam Gase was the head coach there. So I'm not saying that he doesn't have a future in this league, but still, he's not somebody I personally think you could build around. I didn't like him coming out of USC when they drafted him in 2018. I just thought he was kind of another one of those ho-hum. Yeah, he'll rack up some stats, but won't win a lot, and especially after going to the Jets. I think they ruined him. I mean, is there anybody that comes out of the Jets recently, other than the only one that comes to mind is Robbie Anderson? Other than that, I can't really think of one off the top of my head that really has come out of that Jets organization in the last 4 or 5 years that's done anything in the NFL. They've just been a bit player, if anything. So, like I said, that's 2 teams that no longer really are, I believe, are in the hunt. That's my opinion. I don't think that they're any of the Broncos or the Panthers are really going to be in the hunt anymore. So that's good news if you're a Patriots fan, because the Patriots, as we all know, are picking at number 15. So that leaves really nobody in front of them, unless you want to throw the Falcons in there. But there's too much money that was given to Matt Ryan. I'd have to look at the actual cap statistics here, but I believe it's 41. I believe it's 41 million that they've guaranteed to the to between Julio and Matt Ryan. So there's a lot of money locked up there. But as far as anybody else that's really available for that's looking for a quarterback, I guess you could throw the Lions. But I really don't see them with anybody really that's going to be able to jump up and get a quarterback. So I think that's really who you're going to have to worry about. But I really don't see anybody. So I think that path is clear. But as far as this point, sorry, just dealing with some technical difficulties here, folks. But as far as the Patriots go, we'll dive right here into our draft special, as the Patriots, as we just mentioned, have the 15th overall pick. Now, as far as what we all hope the Patriots do, I think there's a large section of the Patriots out there, that Patriots fandom out there, that probably are looking for that number 1 quarterback to be taken, and I'll include myself in that as well. So that's really the big focus for the Patriots, is trying to find that heir apparent at quarterback, trying to find the next person that will take over for the after Tom Brady, because we all know the Cam Newton experience did not go well. He's toast. He's not the answer anymore. He's really he's past his prime. Yeah, he's a good guy and all, but I don't see him lasting much longer, and not on just the Patriots, but in the NFL. I think his days are pretty much over. But as far as, there's really no other options on the roster, because it's Jared Stidham, and I don't believe in Stidham. I know some people out there hold out a little bit of hope for him, but he's really just been he's stash player, to put it nicely, for him. He's really hasn't been anything special, and from all the reports that you hear in practice, he just doesn't seem. And again, this is just take with a grain of salt. I'm not there, but just going off of reports that I've gotten that you hear from beat writers, it just seems like he hasn't been the smartest player in practice. He has a lot of repeat errors, and if you follow the Patriots for a long time, we know Belichick's biggest bone of contention is error repeaters. There's no way that Belichick is going to let somebody that's been making mistakes is going to see the field anytime soon. So I just don't see Stidham as an answer at quarterback. I think he'll be on the camp roster, whatever you do. If you bring in Jimmy Garoppolo, or you bring in a rookie, first round, second round, wherever they come from, he'll be a camp body. But I think that's all that they're going to have. That's pretty much it. But as far as their needs, it's really going to be looking at that quarterback in the first round. If for some reason, if you don't see those top 5 quarterbacks still there, I think that it'll probably be most likely a defensive player. I'd like to see a wide receiver. We'll touch on that here later on, once we get into some of the non-quarterbacks as we roll through the show here. But really, quarterback is the biggest question mark, because it's in the modern NFL, really since maybe since I was a real little kid, maybe since the mid to late 90s, this league has evolved from smash mouth defensive, run the ball, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, give it to Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith type of football, to we've all seen the Bradys, the Mannings, the Mahomes, the list goes on and on, with those prolific quarterbacks that just throw for 4,000, 5,000 yards, 30, 40, 50 plus touchdowns, and all these receivers that are breaking records that we didn't think would fall, that Jerry Rice and some of the other greats have put up. So it's really been pretty much a kind of carousel. It's kind of been up in the air as far as what the Patriots are going to do with their situation. But it's really a league that you need to have a starting quarterback, and a franchise quarterback, excuse me. You can win with guys, a game manager, not as often as people would probably have you believe, because you'll hear guys, oh, well, you can have a strong defense, you can go out there and you can win with a game manager. I mean, obviously everybody goes to that 2000 Baltimore team, but that's an all-time defense. But they had Trent Dilfer as their starter, so I don't see that happening as much. And you could go back to the early Brady days, the early Russell Wilson days, before they became who they were. Before anybody tweets at me, before anybody sends me messages, yes, I know, obviously they're both of Brady's the all-time greatest. He's the GOAT. Russell Wilson is on his way to the Hall of Fame. But when they first started out, they were in that game manager category. But as far as the days are long gone where you can rely on your defense and running games to win you football games on a consistent basis. And I'm talking about relying heavily on the running back, not those dual threat quarterbacks. But as far as a lot of those options for the Patriots, you have to get your starter now. And this is a situation where I don't think they can skimp out and go into the second round and get that Davis Mills, Kellen Mond type of quarterback, which it's not that I hate those options, not like I dislike them, but this is a situation where you can't fool around with your quarterback with your quarterback situation and with your depth chart. You can try to get, like Denver did, you can try to go out and get a Teddy Bridgewater, go get a Sam Darnold, but I would rather have that high ceiling shot in the first round. And yes, we could play the game of going back through the last 10 years, 20 years and seeing all the failures. We all look at Ryan Leaf. We can all look at Jamarcus Russell, who literally ate his way out of the league. But still, I would rather go for that blue chip prospect. And I know there's that stat that's been floating out there that as far as the starting quarterbacks said that were picked in 2016 and onward, outside of Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, that might change, but for totally different reasons, for legal reasons. But those two quarterbacks are really the only ones that have stuck with their team, and Baker Mayfield as well, and Lamar Jackson. So those four are really the only ones that have stuck with their team. All the rest of the first round picks have been traded or released, or they're on different teams at this point. But it still shouldn't scare you away, because as far as the history of the league, just look at the history, not just the last 4 years, because that is a weak argument. That argument really irritates me. It pisses me off. It's like, oh, so the last 4 years you're just gonna sit there and say, oh, 4 years, there's only 4 quarterbacks that were taken in the first round, with I believe there was like 23 first round quarterbacks. Don't quote me on that, but there were obviously there's minimum probably about 2 to 3 first rounders that are taken every year. But you can't take this just a 4-year sample size of a league that's been around for 100 years. They just had their ceremony a couple of years ago. So they've been around for a long time, and it bears fruit there. The first round quarterbacks, more than not, are the ones that end up being your franchise QBs, being the one that brings you to the Super Bowls. And as Patriots fans, we were spoiled. We had a 6th round pick. We all know who that is, Tom Brady, that won us 6 Super Bowls. That is the greatest of all time. But that is like not just winning a lottery ticket, but winning, what was it, like 1.8 billion, the last jackpot that there was, or whatever the largest jackpot that there was. It's like literally hitting that 3 times and like getting Brady what he was able to do. So the chances of that happening again are really, really slim. So I don't want to bank on that late round. I'm not about that. No, I want a first round quarterback. And as far as what options are out there at this point, of course, Trevor Lawrence. We all know Trevor Lawrence is ticketed number 1 to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's a given. Since he stepped foot at Clemson 3 years ago, because he came out as a junior, and when he won a national title as a junior, balled out, won the Heisman. He was ticketed for that number 1 pick since that happened. So it's just basically been 2 years of everybody just looking at their watch, waiting for him to enter the draft. And obviously once he declared this year, it was the race for first, and it was Jacksonville and New York. And I mean, the crazy Patriots fans that had those pipe dreams were hoping, but I didn't think that was ever a possibility, especially with Belichick. Your floor is 6 wins. So you came pretty close to that, as we saw. But so Trevor Lawrence, we just set him aside. He's not he's not going to be he's not going to be any, if he drop, let's just put it this way, if he drops past the first pick in the draft, Shad Khan might as well just sell the team, fire his whole staff. Urban Meyer just could go back into his 10 millionth retirement that he's already again at this point, and just everybody pack up and go home. And I mean, Jaguars fans wouldn't be they'd be used to this disappointment at this point anyways. But if he slips past number one, then the heads are going to roll. Let's just leave it at that. And number two, the Jets, we know they're going to take a quarterback now after Sam Darnold was traded to Carolina. And then with the Jets, the rumor over the last probably 3 months has been Zach Wilson, the quarterback out of BYU, who starting the college football season was a relative unknown because he, like I said, played in BYU, played out in a smaller conference, wasn't in a Power 5, so didn't play. Obviously, they do play some of those Power 5 conferences out in the Mountain West that he plays in, but it's not. He didn't play in a Pac-12, the Big 10, SEC, ACC, Big 12. So it really didn't have as much exposure to the top level competition. I mean, it wasn't as bad as I shouldn't say bad, but it wasn't as minor league as Trey Lance, who we'll get to here in a moment. But he's been really good this year. He came out of nowhere after having a couple of mediocre seasons. Not that they were bad, just in my opinion, wasn't worthy of a number one pick or first round pick. More of a third round pick type of project prospect that you could bring in if you had an established starter. At least that's the way that he looked. And then the way that he came in and performed, I will be honest, I know it'll probably sound a little hypocritical here, but as the season started to go along, because I do watch college football, I actually do like to watch it. I know that's not the norm up here in the Northeast, but I didn't see as many BYU games. Watch Big Ten and the SEC, but I did. After you started hearing about him, I did start to watch him, and I did start to get hooked on Zach Wilson. So I thought, maybe that's a good late round option, maybe a second day pick. In the middle of the second round, and then his stock started to creep up. I'm like, well, maybe you can still get him in the mid round. You might be able to trade up. And then just as the crazy throws, and as people call him, the Mormon Mahomes out there at BYU, he really has skyrocketed as he started to make those Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes style escape from the pocket, just flick it about 50, 60 yards down the field and make these crazy throws. Not quite the baseball throws that Patrick Mahomes has, but because he obviously grew up playing baseball. His dad was a relief pitcher, so he has that background. But still, Zach Wilson has some of that tendency to him where he got a lot of people excited, including me. There was one of those things where like, there might be something there that you can work with, that you can build on going into the future, especially if you get some weapons that go around him. But then, of course, it just seemed like overnight, probably about halfway through October, even before Halloween got here, it seemed like Zach Wilson was pretty much into that top 10 territory. And then, of course, for a while, it was Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. Those were there was even conversation if Justin Fields might go number one. But then, of course, the cooler heads prevailed, and Lawrence went back to being the consensus number one overall pick in that stratosphere of the Elway, the Andrew Luck, and the Peyton Manning category, where it's that once in a generation quarterback prospect. But so Fields was supposedly supposed to go number two. So that was who I thought the Jets were going to go with. Now, obviously, it's still speculation. So we know that the Jets could turn around and pick Fields for all we know. But it just seems like from all the reporting that you hear from the Schefters, from the Ian Rappaports, from everybody, it just seems like the Jets are pretty much settled on Zach Wilson. So as a Patriots fan, we kissed that one goodbye. That one wasn't going to happen. So he's out the door now, at least in my opinion. He's pretty much, I would say the Jets are probably 95% probably going to take Zach Wilson. And I feel bad for Zach Wilson because I think he does have potential. He might be going a little higher than I thought he should go, but still, I think he's going to be a good. He had a chance. I should say, had a chance to be a good pro, because, like I mentioned earlier when we talked about the Jets, that is just god awful. I know when last week's show I called Buffalo the NFL, the NHL Siberia. Well, let's just call the Jets, they're worse than NFL Siberia because at least life can semi-exist in Siberia. I'll just call the Jets the black hole of the NFL. Nothing happens there. They haven't done anything. They haven't won a Super Bowl since 1969 with the worst Hall of Fame quarterback ever in Joe Namath. And they haven't been good since the 90s, since I was like 8 years old. And when Parcells was their coach. So it's really been, my point is that they're god awful. They're bad. They suck. And I feel bad for Darnold because he's going to a franchise that is devoid of weapons. They really need receivers. They don't have a running back. They have a decent tight end, nothing to write home about. And their offensive line is a little bit shaky. They're the Jets. They're just bad. I'm not going to go through the whole roster, but my point is that he's going there. He's not going to get a lot of help. So he's a quarterback that I feel bad for. And because he had potential if he went to a system like San Francisco, who we'll get to in a second, or New England, or even a Denver where they have weapons to work with. But now he's going to the black hole of the NFL, and his career is probably going to be over before it started. Poor Zach Wilson. Pour one out for Wilson. That's all we got to say for you, buddy. And we'll be doing that tomorrow night when the Jets call your name. As far as where the draft really starts, in my opinion, is at pick number 3, and that's with the San Francisco 49ers. And the 49ers, back at the beginning of the month, they ended up trading up with the Miami Dolphins, who ended up to get that number 3 pick. And obviously, as soon as I knew that happened, I knew it was pretty much going to be a quarterback. Even before then, you thought you knew San Francisco wanted a quarterback because they weren't happy with Jimmy Garoppolo and mainly his health. That's been the big thing with Jimmy, is his health. And so you knew they were looking at one even at 12. And now that they traded up for 3, that pretty much signaled to the whole NFL world that they're going to take a quarterback. And then the speculation started, who are they going to take? Is it going to be Fields? Is it going to be Lance? If the Jets don't take Wilson, will they take Wilson? And then obviously, as the weeks have gone on, you can find a million reports out there that they are absolutely in love with Mac Jones, the quarterback for the Alabama Crimson Tide, who just won a national title and set a bunch of college football records as far as passing and touchdown records that were just set the year before by Joe Burrow, the last first overall pick by the Bengals. So he was a good quarterback, but in my opinion, because he was a guy that before the season started, and as probably the first couple weeks went along, as obviously that Alabama team does, all they do are just win and blow out other teams that at the lower end of the SEC and even some of the high end, and it's Bama. Come on, do I have to describe it? It's Alabama. So Mac Jones obviously has all that NFL talent. Even before this year, he had Waddle, Jalen Smith, And then he also that's a team that, just think about this: the Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith was the fourth receiver last year. Jalen Waddle was probably the third or second guy, depending on how things went, because you had Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy on that team. The list goes on. I mean, it's all started with Julio Jones back in 2008. So that's a franchise that has a wealth of wide receiver talent. So my point is, Mac Jones had a Heisman Trophy winner and has another one that if he didn't get hurt, in my opinion, was the better receiver. And who knows if he might have won the Heisman this year in Jalen Waddle. But as far as Jalen Waddle, as far as the 49ers are concerned, they're quote unquote in love with Mac Jones, which that to me would be the biggest mistake, of the biggest overspend I've seen in a long time. I would dare say probably the biggest overspend since the New Orleans Saints and Mike Ditka traded their whole draft to take Ricky Williams, a running back out of Texas, in I believe it's 98 or 99. And basically that's what cost Ditka his job. So, I mean, I don't think Shanahan would end up costing him his job at this point, just because he didn't trade a whole draft. But still, I think it would be probably one of the second largest overspend to use your draft capital on that. So really, that's where the draft starts. I think it's more than a certainty, because that they're going to take Jones. I really think the rumors of Trey Lance, I think there are some to it, because I think Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, the GM out there, I think that they do see some potential there. He does. Trey Lance has that gigantic arm in the mold of a Mahomes, where he can just throw with 60, 70-yard bombs with ease. But I really think that the Niners, because of the position that they're in, and let's not forget, before the 49ers ended up getting all these injuries last year, they were the team that went to that were the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. They had an amazing defensive line. They have, in my opinion, the best tight end in football, all around tight end in George Kittle. We can debate that another day as far as the best tight ends, but as far as, you had Kittle, then you had Deebo Samuel, who was a rookie in 2019. So that was a loaded team. That was a team that was expected to go back to the playoffs and make a deep run again. But of course, the injuries came along, and then that team struggled to get to 500, and they finished below it. So that's where they get to that number 2 pick. They get to that number 12 pick before trading up for the third of the Dolphins. So keep in mind, this is a team that's playoff ready when they get Joey Bosa and they get a lot of their pieces back on the defensive line and in the secondary. So especially obviously on offense with their wide receivers and Deebo. So, and then with Ayuk there now. So this is a team that they're looking to upgrade that quarterback, as we mentioned. And this is another thing where this might affect the Patriots, because Jimmy Garoppolo is the starter for the Niners, and they're not happy with how many games he's missed. He has only started 52% of the games since he's become the Niners starter. And I know, and I like Jimmy. I'm not in love with him like some other Patriots fans are, but he was a guy that when they traded for him, they looked at him as the future franchise quarterback. He studied under Brady. He had Belichick, obviously, as his head coach, and Josh McDaniels, so he had a wealth of knowledge to work on. And I mean, when he's out there on the field, he is a good quarterback. I'm not going to put him in the top tier, that top 15. Well, maybe in that 13 to 15 range. So I lied. So maybe not in that top 12 quarterbacks, but still, he certainly is a guy you can win with. Don't get me wrong, he certainly is. We saw that he helped get the Niners to the Super Bowl. I wouldn't call him a passenger like some people have, because you can't just be a passenger unless you have an all-time great defense like I mentioned before, like the Ravens, or I wouldn't say the Bears. Obviously the Bears have an all-time great defense, but as far as I'd put McMahon above a passenger, but still, Garoppolo shows that he showed out in some games. Let's not call him a passenger. That's not right. But as far as what I would say for Mac Jones and about what the Niners are probably going to do, I say or Trey Lance. I think it's probably going to be it's probably going to be Jones. So how that works with the Patriots as far as when we look down the board, because as I mentioned earlier, it really has been the doors are wide open, because right now not the Bengals, they got their quarterback last year. The Broncos and the Panthers have already traded away for serviceable or young quarterbacks that still have some potential. So I think those teams aren't going to pick a quarterback. So right now, all you have to worry about are the Redskins. Oops, sorry, find me. It's the Washington football team. Ooh, sorry. That's never going to change. It's going to be hard to kick that habit. Then you also have the Steelers, and then the Bears. And if you want to throw the Saints in there, if you really want to believe if Winston's their starting quarterback. So right now, you're not fighting teams ahead of you. You just have to worry about, in my opinion, Washington, because Dan Snyder is dumb. He'll trade a whole truckload of picks just to get a mediocre first round pick that shouldn't have gone. So that's the one team I worry about, because I don't think the Bears, they're a little bit more stingy on their cap space and on their draft capital. So I don't think that's going to happen. So that's what I think is that's really what I think the Patriots are going to. They have the luxury of waiting to see what falls. I still think you should probably trade up maybe with the Giants or get into like the 8th spot. Don't send like 4 first-round picks, of course. I think that would be too much of an overpay. But still, I'm all in favor of moving up to get somebody like Justin Fields. And that's the guy I want. I want Justin Fields. That, to me, he is the guy that has showed out for the Patriots. I hope he shows up for the Patriots. He showed out for Ohio State, especially this year. Even though it was a COVID-shortened Big Ten season, he played so well. He went up against Trevor Lawrence, and he even got hurt there late in the first half. But he showed all the guts and determination and played absolutely amazing in that semifinal game. I know Ohio State didn't show up that well against Bama in the national title game, but I mean, that Bama team has got umpteen million NFL players, not just that are going this year, that are going to go in the next 4 years. And we all know they're going to reload for the next 400 years at Bama. So they'll bring back Nick Saban, Futurama style, in the floating capsule, making picks and bringing people into Bama. But anyways, I really love Fields. He's the guy that I think has the second most potential out of this whole class of quarterbacks, next to Trevor Lawrence. So that's the guy that I want. And it really seems like there are a lot of smoke and rumors about the Patriots trading up. There actually was a report on Bleacher Report that was, I think it actually was from Tom Pelissero with NFL Network, that the Patriots have called the Carolina Panthers about the trading up to get the number 8 pick, which I would love to see that. Even though, and that I made that opinion before the Denver Broncos traded, but I still think they should, just to make sure that teams like the Redskins, Washington football team, whatever your new stupid name is going to be, going in the future, but you have to just make sure that you get a little further ahead than some of those other teams are willing to. And you're at 15, so it's not that far to leap up. So I would be willing to give up this year's first round, a second round pick, or if you have to give up next year's first round, because it's a franchise quarterback. You can't get by in this league without a franchise quarterback. It's not going to happen. I don't want to be in mediocrity land here for the next 5-8 years just trying to throw darts. So it's really, to me, it's not something that I want to play around with. Don't go all Saints from the Ditka years and trade away your whole draft and trade away your next of kin. But still, it's something that I'm okay with if you have to give up multiple picks and high picks to get him. Just not like five first round picks. That's too many. But that to me, that is option number one. That's where I want them to start is to take Justin Fields. And obviously, if he gets taken, my next would be Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. He's a little bit more of an unknown because he played in Division I AA, which is where a lot of people around here know it's what University of Maine plays in. So it's the tier down. So they don't compete with the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Bamas for the big time Division I, the BCS championship. So, but the North Dakota Bison are one of the dynasties of one AA. So that they've won, I believe it's 8 titles out of like the last 11 years. So they're amazing. That's where Carson Wentz went to, who now got traded to the Colts. So he's their starting quarterback. So, I mean, I like Wentz. I mean, he's had some up and downs, but still. So Trey Lance, a little bit more of the unknown, only played 1 full season as a starter back in 2019. The Bison only had 1 showcase game so that they could show that Trey Lance hit off his skill set, basically. So that's really where they stay. But he didn't really look the same because he in 2019 he threw 28 touchdowns, no interceptions. So obviously against a lot lower competition, even lower than what Zach Wilson faced. So he's kind of more the unknown. He's a little bit on the smaller side, but he's a dual threat guy, just like Justin Fields is. And so between both Trey Lance and Justin Fields, you're going to get a guy that obviously he's not a straight runner like a Lamar Jackson is, who Jackson's first thought is to run. They're more on the Mahomes Wilson side, where they Russell Wilson side, where they use their legs, use their speed to get out of the pocket, but and make throws, get into those tight windows. It's not their first instinct to run. So if they don't get Fields, I want Lance. Just because he's more of a project, but he still has more potential there. I would rather take somebody with a high potential than maybe a mid-round quarterback. And to my next point, from Marsh LFG in the chat, what does he think about, or what do I think about Jimmy G coming back? Makes him physically ill. I don't know if it would make me physically ill, Marsh, but as far as bringing him back, I would like it. I wouldn't love it because, as you probably heard when I talked about the 49ers and what they want to do at quarterback, Jimmy G, as I said, he's only played in 52% of his games. He's missed a lot of games for the Niners. He tore his ACL. He's had some foot and ankle injuries. When he's healthy, he's good. He's not going to be what I think a Justin Fields could be for you if you take him. My opinion is if the Patriots, for whatever reason, they're not thrilled with Fields or Lance. And let me just kind of roll this back here. I don't want Mac Jones. I think he's overrated. I think he's more of a day 2 pick, a 3rd round, 2nd round guy. I'm not big on Mac Jones. I just think he's played with all that talent at Bama. Guys were wide open there, and I don't want to hear, well, he threw him open. The guy won the Heisman. The other guy had a potential to win the Heisman. So to me, it's not. I'm not big on Mac Jones. So, but anyways, getting back to the question, it's basically I like Jimmy. I'm not selling my soul to get Jimmy like some of these people want him back. They're like, oh yeah, he was what Bill wanted. He was the heir apparent. But yeah, that was back in 2014 through 2017 before he got traded, before we knew what he was. And we saw that little sample size in 2016. I liked what I saw with the sample until he got hurt against the Dolphins. He fell on his shoulder. He didn't fall properly. Brady has been his whole life. He's taught himself to fall properly. And I know freak injuries happen, but still, that was one where you saw the video. He puts his arm out like that and falls right onto his shoulder, so he hurts himself. So to me, he's more of an injury risk. I wouldn't say injury prone, just because some of the injuries have been bigger, but to me, if you bring him in, you have to have a backup. And you all know how I feel about Cam. He's not the answer. So that's just something I don't want them to do. It's if you, as far as put their lives in the hands of Cam Newton again, that was a bad experiment. So if you do bring Jimmy back, you have to make sure that that's where you would go into the second round and get a Davis Mills, get a Kellen Mond, get a Kyle Trask if he falls that far. But there's some rumors that maybe late in the first round he might go. But to me, I like him. You did bring some tight ends over in Jonnu Smith in the offseason, as well as Hunter Henry, who's more the pure pass catcher. So he played, obviously, we know how he played with George Kittle. Even though George Kittle is the best tight end in the league, you still have two top-tier tight ends that you have to work with. So that's obviously something Jimmy knows how to use, that intermediate system between playing with the Patriots and his years starting with the Niners. So it's something that I'm in favor of if you don't get Fields or Lance, because I'm not a big fan of putting your quarterback situation into the hands of a second round guy and then have Cam Newton. So that's where, if you have if you have Garoppolo, then I feel a little bit better about taking a second round guy, but it's not ideal to me. So as far as that's concerned, I wouldn't mind it. I'm not going to be jumping up and down for it and running down the hall screaming like if tomorrow night if Justin Fields gets taken by the Patriots, that's when all euphoria will hit me. So yeah, so Jimmy's on the table. He's kind of more of that. You need to go get a good used car, or I shouldn't say good. I should say a decent used car where you know that you might have some problems, but it's going to be easier to fix type of thing, instead of you getting like that really banged up sports car like Cam. So and that's my analogy. So that's where I think it stays with Jimmy. So I like, that's really what I'm hoping that the Patriots do. Is that's my tier of decisions, is Fields, Lance, and then Jimmy. So and then take a quarterback in the second round. So building off of that, let's just say that Fields and Lance get picked, or the Patriots pass on them, and then they get picked up later on. What I think the Patriots should do in that case, if all the top 5 quarterbacks are gone, or Belichick doesn't believe in any of those quarterbacks, which, in my opinion, if you don't believe in a quarterback, don't overspend. Don't take one just to take a quarterback. That's dumb. That's how franchises get stuck in ruts all these years. So to me, that's what you shouldn't do. Don't take a quarterback just to take one. So if those ones are gone, and if the ones that you don't think, if Belichick doesn't think they're going to be worthy of a first round pick, what I think they should do is take Micah Parsons if he falls to them, or if they can get up and take him, because the Patriots need linebackers. And Micah Parsons played at Penn State, is an all-world linebacker. He's a little bit on the smaller side. He's in that 225, 230 range as far as his weight, so he's not a gigantic thumper like a Dante Hightower is. But he's still he's still an athletic freak. He's kind of, to me, he's a little bit heavier than a Devin White out of Tampa Bay. So, but he still has great coverage. Well, I wouldn't say great, but he's got really good coverage skills. He can play the pass rush, move inside, so he can be that chess piece that Belichick likes. So, to me, that's the piece that I want them to get if they don't end up going with a quarterback in the first round. So shore up that defense, because in my opinion, a lot of those teams, even today, we've seen some of those teams want to jump up and get some of those high round receivers, because I think Jamar Chase is probably going to go to the Bengals if they don't take Penei Sewell out of Oregon. So Jamar Chase and reunite Chase with Burrow. So he'll be long gone. I think Devontae Smith is probably going to end up going to the Dolphins, reunite another Bama quarterback. Give them a dynamic weapon to go along with Will Fuller, who they picked up in free agency. And so that would leave you with Jalen Waddle. So I love Waddle. Don't get me wrong. I want Waddle. If he's there, then that's where that's where I'm more of an offensive guy. So I might lean towards Waddle, but I think Waddle will end up getting taken ahead, because it's really the pass catchers that are going to be Waddle, Smith, Jamar Chase, and then Kyle Pitts, who is everybody is already anointing him a Hall of Famer. They are calling him Calvin Johnson. He's the tight end out of Florida, by the way. That he's not like a Gronk, big physical guy, but he's more of like the pass catching tight end, the Darren Waller type, or Travis Kelce. So it's a situation where those four guys, I think, are going to go in that top 13 picks before the Patriots get there, because I think there are going to be some guys that trade up. Now, I could be wrong. I hope so, because I'd love to see the Patriots, if they don't take that quarterback, if they don't have an opportunity to take a quarterback, to load up on some of those weapons, especially after Julian Edelman retired. So, I mean, as far as what I hope they do if they don't get a quarterback, if Waddle's still there, take him. If not, then I want them to take Parsons. I really have fallen in love with Parsons as far as my non-quarterback in this draft. Micah Parsons is I think he's going to be special. If you're looking at some other guys out there, some other potential picks, I think you're looking at a Patrick Surtain out of Alabama, who's a number one corner. He got a little bit. He's not even though he's bigger, he's like in that 6'3" mold. He's not a physical corner. He's more of a cover, but he's still a number one corner. And then you have J.C. Horn as well, who that's the one that a lot of people have mocked to the Patriots as far as their mock drafts have been concerned. The son of Joe Horn, if everybody remembers the cell phone out of the sock back in New Orleans days. So that would be his son. He's projected as a top corner. So, and of course, with all the rumors about Stephon Gilmore and J.C. Jackson, sorry, in a brain fart there. As far as those two, if Gilmore might get traded in this draft for some draft capital, if J.C. Jackson, maybe the same happens with him just because he's on that tender. Even though he had 9 interceptions this year, I still don't believe in him as a number one. I think he's a really good number two when you pair him with somebody like an actual number one like Gilmore. So and obviously Gilmore is coming off that injury. I think the way that a side note, as far as what they loaded up with this offseason, getting all the offensive players and some of the defensive players and Judon and the defensive linemen, you should, if you really want to contend, which I think that's what they're trying to do here in Belichick's last 5 or 6 years, I think you should keep Gilmore, give him a 2 or 3 year extension. I wouldn't go any longer than that since he's 31, 32 years old. I still think he's got plenty left in the tank, but just give him a shorter term deal, bump up his pay, but not up to the Jalen Ramsey because of his age. So keep him, but if you decide to walk away from maybe a J.C. Jackson, I think then you'll need that second corner that can be on the outside, because you have plenty of slot corners. and some of their others haven't worked out as far as in Jawan Williams out of Vandy. So that's where I think they should go. As far as I think to me, it's Parsons and then J.C. Horn, and one other late round candidate that I think they should look into is Xavion Collins, the Tulsa product. He's a bigger, he's a bigger athletic linebacker than Parsons is more athletic. But what I mean by bigger and more athletic is that Xavion Collins is the Dante Hightower type of size, but Hightower is more of the traditional thumper, as you will. But Collins, to me, does have athletic ability with the size. So it's the size and athletic ability that I think Belichick would covet, because he surprisingly had a lot of interceptions this year for Tulsa as a linebacker. And he's another one that you can move around on the quote unquote chessboard. So that's another one that I would be happy with, just because they need somebody, not just depth. I know you brought back Van Noy, but it's somebody that you still need. Somebody that's going to be able to take over for Hightower. Hightower's in his 30s now in the NFL. That's like that's like being 40 years old, 40, 50 years old. That's old man territory. So it's something that they need to get that heir apparent and get depth there. So that's somebody that I think they could take in the first round as well to beef up that defense. So as far as that's what I view as the non-quarterback part of that draft. For me, it's Parsons, Waddle, Horn, Surtain, but I think Surtain is going to be taken by the Cowboys if they don't get the Pitts, who they've been rumored to, and then for the Patriots, I think that the other one would be Xavion Collins. So that's where I think they will sit. I don't think they'll take a lineman. They brought back Andrews and Brown, Trent Brown, after they traded from the Raiders. So they have plenty of depth there. As far as enough where you don't spend a first round, maybe later rounds like they have in the years past. So as far as when you look down the road in day 2 of the draft, that's where you're going to start to see them building the depth for this team, as far as picking up some slot receivers, some guys to replace Edelman, or at least to groom to replace him, to add to that receiving core. Because as realistically, as much as I want Waddle in the first round, I don't think Belichick is going to do it. I'd love to see him do it, but I don't think he will. I think he's going to focus this year more on the second, third round, fourth round guys, plucking some receivers there. So what I would like to see them do is get some of those depth pieces, or get some of those second tier receivers, or maybe even get a guy that could evolve into a number 1 over the years. And that's where I kind of get excited here in that second round, where my mind starts to run, because there's actually a lot of options here as far as that secondary market's concerned, because you have, as I mentioned, you have Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss, and Elijah Moore is 5'11", 6 foot, so he's a little shorter. But he's in the slot. He's been really productive for them. He's got speed too. I believe his 40 time is in a high 4.3. So that's really fast, faster than Edelman. But that's somebody that I'm really excited about. And Ole Miss lately has produced a lot of good wide receivers. You have AJ Brown, DK Metcalf. So that's something where I think they'll be able to they'll find some depth there. And then they also have Kadarius Toney out of Florida, who is one of those borderline round 1, round 2 picks, but I think he'll slip into the second round at this point, with just so many top tier wide receivers and some of those defensive players that are going to slip down because of all the quarterbacks and receivers that get taken early. So I'm not as high on Toney as I am on Elijah Moore. To me, Toney he can be a little bit more on the streaky side. But I still like him. I wouldn't be upset if they took him, but my preference would be Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss. And then you have Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC, University of Southern California. He to me is one of my favorite second, third round guys, along with Moore, because again, he's a little bit smaller than Moore. Not as fast, but he's still been very productive with USC, and obviously USC has produced some good receivers here as well, with Juju and Michael Pittman, who started to break out towards the end with the Colts. So I like what he brings. So both Moore and Brown, they're not your typical slot receiver that's smaller, doesn't run like a really fast 40 time, but they both are faster, because usually the slot receiver, they get the code words. Oh, they're quick, meaning basically they're not fast. They just get in and out of their cuts and they just run the routes really well. No, these are guys that are fast, but they're good route runners. They're all around good receivers. They can play a little on the outside and throw Amari Rogers as well out of Clemson. And that's another guy that'll throw into the mix there. So if the Patriots on the second day of the draft in round 2 and 3, if they can get Rogers, I've seen maybe slip into the 4th round as well. So in the 2nd through the 4th round, if you can get one of those 4 guys, I would be happy with adding one of them to the receiving core. And actually, I'd like them to double dip, because the Patriots have been known to do that, double dip and get 2 of those guys. I would be so happy with that, because not only do they need depth, they need some youth, but that also has potential and that can develop, because N'Keal Harry has been an absolute bust. So like I said, if you don't take somebody in the 1st round, you need to get some youth and infusion into this receiving core, because as much as their offseason spending spree was heralded, they really haven't gotten anybody that wows you in the receiving core. Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, yeah, they're number 1 tight ends, but they're not a receiver. You lost Edelman. Harry's been a bust. So it's just, and now you're looking at Nelson Aguilar, who had a resurgent year in not Oakland, man, they're in Vegas now, so there's another fine coming from the NFL. But as far as he did have a pretty good year out there, but he was pretty much a bust in Philly. So if he can kind of bring what he did last year in Vegas, then I do like it. But I'm not like super high on it. They did overpay, paying 2 years for $26 million. Kendrick Bourne. He's 4th, at best a 3rd, but you don't want him to be. He kind of reminds me of a poor man Jacoby Myers. So you have players, but it's really just quote unquote wide receivers is what you have now. You don't have that breakout guy. So that's why I'd like to see them get more, because Elijah Moore is not just a slot guy. He can play on the outside, and I think he's got a high ceiling. Same for St. Brown as well. And Amari Rogers is one of those ones that I'd like to see them, if they get Moore or Brown or even Tony, to get Amari Rogers. So that as far as that's what I would like to see them do. As you said, it's obviously, as you can tell, I'm an offensive guy, but obviously, like I talked about earlier, they need to get some defensive help. So if any of those linebackers slip as well, there's some linebackers out of Purdue that look pretty good as well that you could dip into, as well as Alabama. They have a nice good crop down there as well. So you could look into some of those. And Christian Barmore, if he slips out of the 1st round, which I've seen a few mock drafts where he's as well, then that would be a nice addition to the defensive line. So really the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, that's where I think they can get some starters in the receiving core and beef up that defensive front 7, because that really needs it. That they're missing a lot. as far as some actual playmakers. Yeah, they have bodies there, and they did bring back Van Noy. They did sign Henry and Godchow, but Godchow and Henry are kind of more bodies to me. So that's really on that line where you need to get some help for Judon, who will slide in and out there, and then Chase Winovich and Lawrence Guy, who came back. So you do need some other playmakers to help them out. So I think that's where they should go. And of course, they do have a lot of picks here in this draft. Not the most in the entire NFL, but they still have 10 picks to deal with. They have a first, which is the 15th, and they have the second, which is their own at 46, and then they do have a third round. I know there's been a lot out there that they don't, but they have a compensatory pick that they have which is the 96, and then they have four fourth rounders. The 139th is theirs, and the others are ones that they've traded or gotten compensatory picks for. And then they also have a fifth round, which is 177, 2 sixth, and a seventh. So they have capital. Obviously, once you kind of get towards the fifth and sixth and seventh, those ones not as much, but that's where those picks, if you have multiple, you can either package them, try to move up, or those fifth and sixth ones, that's where you end up getting some veteran players that you can trade with, like when they got Wes Welker, Randy Moss, they used a fourth and a fifth. So those ones can get you some veterans. But I think you can still use some of those the fourth and the third to move up if you want to get back higher into the second or third round, depending on where you want to be. So they have a lot of draft capital that they can deal with, and they still have $15 million. So don't ignore that they could actually go out in the draft. Well, we're all looking for some of these young studs to try that they can try to develop with. There could be some of those draft day trades that they've made in the past. So I know Julio Jones has been the target. I think with the cap situation, they can't deal him until June. If not, I would say that one. Look at that one during the draft. So there are going to be some options out there. So I think there could be some of those for the Patriots, especially if they get if they do fill some of that defensive line and maybe get a young receiver. And if they have their quarterback, I think that's where the Patriots could trade away some of those for some veteran players this year, just because they're in, like I said, I think they're in Belichick's last 5 or 6 years of his coaching career. So they're going to want to load up and try to win. So that's really where the Patriots stand this year in the draft. As far as what I think they're going to do, like I said, I hope you'll see some tweets or some posts out of my social media with me going crazy after they draft Justin Fields, because I really hope when I go to bed tonight and throughout the whole day, I'm just going to be praying that they take Justin Fields, because that's been my dream. And like I said, I thought he was going to go number 2 overall. So this has been kind of like a dream scenario kind of building where he might actually fall and you have a chance to get him. I just hope that the Patriots actually pull the trigger and somehow find a way to get him if he slips to 15 or they have to trade up. I hope that's what happens. And if that does, or they get Trey Lance, either way, I'll be really happy. And if they can get some wide receiving depth in the second round, and then also maybe trade back into that second if there's still a good linebacker that's left there, or in the third. If they can fill the quarterback, receiver, and linebacker, then I will be so happy that that's what they've done. So that was our draft special for this year. We'll hopefully here over the next how many years we'll keep on doing these draft specials. I had a lot of fun tonight, and it was good to hear from some of you out on the broadcast in the chat. So I'm going to do a lot more of these live shows. And then obviously, if you weren't able to listen to the live show tonight, it's going to be up on the podcast out on SoundCloud, and still working on iTunes and Spotify, getting it out there as well. So that will be available if you weren't able to hit up the live stream. And then tune in next week. We'll we'll get back to doing all four sports. We'll get back to the Red Sox, who are streaking, and checking in on how they've been doing, and hoping that pitching staff stays up. And the Boston Bruins are going towards the playoff push. They're starting to heat up here. Hopefully the Celtics aren't going to make me depressed having to talk about them and how bad they've been. And obviously, we'll recap the draft. So everybody, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next week for another episode of the New England Sports Weekly.